So, welcome everyone. We're happy to host one more meetup together with DataFest. Again, we're talking about data, and I know AI, so boring. Today we are welcoming our friends from Silkbank. Guests first, so our guests from Silkbank will go first. Aleksi and Shalva will be talking about some financial stuff. After that, we will have a short presentation from DataFest. Then our speaker will present his part. Please stay until the end. We have a fun quiz and gifts to give out. And of course, like after the official part, you can stay to socialize. Also, after each presentation, you will have a chance to ask questions. So feel free to raise your hand. We'll give you a microphone so that everyone online can hear us. Just a few words about EPAM, just in case someone doesn't know. We're a global technological company. We've been in Georgia. It's been 6 years now. 5? No, 6. It's the 6th year. Yeah, 6th year. We're happy to support local community with spreading knowledge about technology, inspiring young talent as well. We have a lot of learning opportunities. We will talk about that at the end of the session as well. So I'm also here. If you have any questions about other stuff related to EPAM, you can always come up to me and chat about it. And let's start, I guess. So Aleksi, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
No worries. Oh, not anymore, I guess. All right. Thanks. First of all, thanks all for coming here, and thanks EPAM and DataFest, Nino, for hosting this event. Today, actually, we're not going to be talking a lot about finance or accounting, even though we're coming from Silkbank. We're going to try to focus on data, AI, usability, and how small teams really can shape the nature of their companies. With no further ado, I'm going to start with the problem. No worries. Still waiting. I think it's working all right. It's okay. If people can see, we can go through this way as well. Sure. So we're going to start with the problem. And the problem was actually bank's quick success. You probably know Silk Road Bank, which was the old name of our bank. So I'm not going to talk about that too much because Shako will speak about it in its own context. But the idea is that we went through the rebranding at 2022. Therefore, we had a new clientele, and clientele base growth basically was skyrocketing in 2023, 24, 25. So problem was that there was increasing number of data points and increasing number of reports and analytics asked from the business perspective. And I guess the data was not ready for it. So let me explain quickly a process, how it worked back then. I see myself. Yeah. Thank you. So the way the process worked back then was that we had to register a Jira task for IT SQL team to create some kind of predetermined view, which was only basically the beginning of this great journey of creating a master commercial report, which actually can be digested from the business perspective and can be made, on top of that, could be made decisions. So how this worked is that when we registered the task, the SQL team, they created some under the hood. Basically, what they did was to create a procedure with a bunch of formulas that created like predetermined views. And in order to generate one singular commercial report, we had to consolidate together at least 4 or 5 of these reports. And in order to actually extract this report from the source system, you would need something like 5-10 minutes up to an hour to get a singular Excel raw file. So back then, this was the process. I know it sounds manual and it sounds boring. So in order to actually generate one report and refresh it one time, you would need approximately like something like 3 to 5 hours per day, just ingesting the data, collecting it together, and putting it in a usable form. So we knew that we could not go on like this, and soon enough, when customer base would grow too quickly, analytics would be paralyzed. So we had to come up with a solution very quickly. Back then we were using Power Query because we were bottlenecked in regards to like what was the source data and how we could stitch it together. So even if we use something like Power BI or some other tools, we would still be bottlenecked by these source problems. And so we sat down, and the first instinct that we had was to find the people who knew this stuff better than us, so people who built the warehouses. And I don't know when things exactly changed, but approximately 5 or 10 years ago, warehousing was a really complicated business. So only few companies did it in Georgia and had a good track record. And it costed a lot of money. I don't know if you heard stories, but I've heard even before I was at university that some company paid $1 million, some pharmacy, and they could not actually use the system at all. So it was a lot of wasted money, and it was a very complicated system to build. It took a lot of months. So when we spoke with the vendors, we actually faced the same issues. They offered some kind of complicated solutions, which were like some kind of monstrosities with a lot of layers and a lot of buzzwords. They said that it would be a minimum of 6 months it would take to actually build these systems, and they would be the ones doing it. And I guess this was the main problem when I was sitting down with these guys, that knowledge and control would be in their hands. So if I woke up tomorrow, or our CEO woke up and looked at the dashboard and saw the wrong number or saw the wrong pipeline, something burnt up, someone to blame was these guys, right? And they could not fix the problems unless like we waited with open hands for their grace to somehow come and save us. So what we did not want to release, and money was not the biggest issue, even though on some level it was, biggest issue was letting go of the control. We could not do that because we know statistically that only 20% of outsourced projects in this regard are actually successful. And that was the experience that we based our decisions on. So we sat down and tried to break down the warehouse into, instead of the buzzword, just into what really wanted to get from warehouse, right? So what we wanted first and foremost was to get daily refreshed tables, daily refreshed reports. We didn't have a need for live data per se for most of like 95% of reporting. And the maximum times of refresh that we required was maybe like 2 times a day. So it was not the monstrosity that we were looking for, but some kind of simple solution that would be easy enough for a junior data analyst or junior data engineer to work with, right? So we removed all this noise from this complicated solution, and what we were left with was a really simple and understandable platform. And we got lucky because our solution architect was really experienced with AWS, and at that time regulations were also getting much more reasonable around the cloud services in Georgia, and National Bank of Georgia already allowed the use of the cloud services and the banking, so we were not constrained by that factor anymore. And as you understand, like cloud services removed the huge barrier of building data warehouses and data lake houses, because they had all these services that you could use to actually build it, right? Contrary to the like historical way of doing it, which was to like do everything together to build these services yourself, and managing it really required like a lot of people. That's why vendors were pricing it at $250,000 and plus. So our solution architect proposed several schemas of how we would do it, and we chose the simplest one actually, because we are not there to achieve some kind of architectural perfection. We are there to actually do business, create business value, and do it fast. So instead of waiting for 6 months, we sat down and chose these services that you see on your screen. There are some additional services that you don't see, but this is pretty much it in the nutshell. On the left side, you see the data sources, like some of the data sources that we are processing. And then you have the ingestion layer. So AWS is pretty flexible with this stuff because you have an API gateway to accept the incoming push events. You have Lambda to write your own code and build some kind of custom connectors if you have a need for it. You have ECS containers to run like something like RabbitMQ consumer to consume live events. And basically standard JDBC bridges to connect directly to the database, query, and get the data. Then you have an additional, then you have a S3 layer, which we call lending, because that's where the data lands. In traditional medallion architecture, probably this place would be called bronze layer because you collect all the structured and unstructured data there. Something like JSON files, CSVs, you don't really care if like you get the duplicates there or whatnot. You just put all the data there, you give it the metadata, stuff like where is it coming from, where is it was ingested, and etc. And then you go to the next layer, which is a transformation layer. In AWS, it's called Glue, but in all cloud providers, there are different ways to do it. And this is the place where you apply the transformations, the business logic, the data quality checks. You do the upsert operations or the insert, depending on which type of data you're working with. And finally, you go to this beautiful place, which is called like target layer. I guess I forgot to change the slide there. This is where you actually get silver tables, traditionally what they call it, is that these tables are clean, these tables are in compressed format, meaning that it's queryable, so it's not gonna take like 3, 5, and 10 minutes to query like a singular table. And this is the place where analytics really come into the place, right? So then additional consumers that we have there is Amazon Athena or Redshift for heavy analytics. And what you do there, traditionally, either you can work with the silver data by itself, or you can like read some Kimball and maybe build some fact and dimensions in the gold layer and get this final views, which are going to be much easier to process. And then you have the final consumers, and this is the side that actually the business sees, which is Power BI, Excel reports. Consumers in this case, like human consumers, are the business people. And data consumers are like SageMaker, for example, in AWS, which allows you to like use Jupyter notebooks to write some code, schedule your queries, and much more. And this is something new, or I don't know, I felt like I've been using this all my life. This is an AI layer, which is basically an abstraction layer that allows you to ask questions in natural language and get the answers in the format of a report, just a textual analysis chart or something similar. And basically there we had it. Under 3 months, with 3 people working on this and only $15,000 in man-hour costs, roughly speaking, we were able to build this system. And the best part was that we did not have to actually wait for the system to be finished to actually create reports. While we were building it, there could be someone who's already building reports, like a data analyst, and everything was in our control, right? We cut something like probably $200,000 by doing the system ourselves. Maybe it was not architecturally perfect. There could be other solutions that are better than this. But for our use case and what we needed to do, this was perfect. By itself, obviously, data warehouse and warehousing in general is a silent work, meaning that unless you're going to get some value out of it, there's truly no reason to do it just by the sake of doing it, just for the sake of doing it. And what really mattered is that business actually started seeing numbers, and instead of waiting 3 days to get a single number on the dashboard, now it could be done daily basis, and no time was spent on this data collection part, which was 80% of what people did before we started this endeavor. This also meant that people who were actually working on this project, they became data engineers from the reporting specialists because they were the ones actually doing it. They were the ones that actually understood the data because they were working with it every day. And people who understand the data and take it by the heart, basically they're the people who can create business value and financial impact. So Process was a lot of fun itself as well, because in the beginning we were seeing a lot of red failure rates on the observability dashboard. Our glue jobs were failing, our hearts were racing early morning when we woke up and wanted to check if the job failed or not. This all happened, and we even started have a goal of having a failure rate under 1%, which meant that out of every 100 ETL jobs, only one would fail. And we got to the point where we were so good that we started tracking this KPI of how many days since the last incident, basically, since the last failure of the ETL. This was a joke, like referencing TV shows Office, where Daryl's team, ironically in the warehouse, is tracking the same KPI. And at some point, we were all like Michael Scotts breaking down these ETL jobs and, just creating a mess and total failure in the first 2 weeks and 3 weeks of doing this endeavor. So yeah, in the end, what we got was that we had the control over the system. We had the in-house knowledge accumulated, and these guys could go on and do much more interesting stuff, which you're going to see. And yeah, we didn't go to the vendors, and we know that that was the right decision. Now, we also had a very ambitious goal. From the end of building the warehouse, we also understood that there is a huge ongoing problem that's been around maybe for 100 years, that at the crossroads of business and data teams, there's always this place, no matter how many dashboards you build or ad hoc analysis you do or the reports you generate, there's always an unpredictable question that you didn't think about, right? Whole philosophy of Kimball is basically based on the fact that you should understand the business process, and based on the business process, basically build the pipeline and data warehouse. But no matter what you do, there's always like a universal or some kind of variation of a question that you didn't think about. That's why you need data analysts in the team, by the way. Otherwise, you would just standardize everything. And for tackling this problem, we thought that we could use AI. So you're all familiar with the medallion architecture, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. The idea is that you're progressing data to its more raw form, to the purest form of it, basically, which is the gold layer. In gold layer, this is the consumer of the gold layer is Power BI and other tools, basically ML and etc. But what changed in the past 3 years, I guess, is that there's been an additional consumer that you could actually integrate on top of the gold layer, which is AI. However, actually, big companies were not quick enough to implement this. For example, I know that there's been extension of BI applications, stuff like Copilot for the Microsoft on top of the Power BI, or QuickSight's own AI, which is really weird because they are like eons behind from their American release. So if you're working in America, you would see that QuickSight is much more advanced now, but in European servers, let's say in European versions where we can basically buy low host because we are regulated, the QuickSight is really bad. Like you have to prepare so many things to actually get the AI feeling on top of the BI. And also what we don't like about this approach, that building AI on top of the BI, is that you're constrained with the shape of the report, and you're also constrained the data that is living behind it. So we did not want to be constrained. We wanted to have an omnipresent data analyst. This is our goal, and this is what we were trying to build. And in order to do this, we had to remove the middleman. So we had to remove the BI and build AI straight on top of the gold layer of the warehouse. So we went to the drawing board again. We knew we had to innovate because we could not be constrained with the things. So with the help of our solution architect, we searched few services on AWS because that was our native platform already. And we found the services that could actually help us to build this system in a controlled way. One of the services being Bedrock, and there were several modules that we really needed to have. First was schema and metadata management, which is required in order to control what AI actually sees. It allows you to pick which table you want to fit to the AI. It allows you to choose which columns you want it to see for the security purposes, and so on. And the most important thing is that unless your data is really prepared, you need to add descriptions in order for AI to understand the context of each column, right? So we got lucky because our foundation was really strong, meaning that all these tables that we built on the gold layer really had intuitive namings, and whatever was the name of the column really represented what was inside. And this was a really important part because usually this is the part that takes the most of the time. Second thing we required was user group management, and third, the most important, orchestration. Now, orchestration, as you know, is obviously the trickiest part in building AIs. But we had one philosophy that when a new data analyst comes into your team, the first thing you do is you put him through the onboarding journey, right? And onboarding journey looks like something like this. You know, they need to understand which tables they're going to be working with, what is the context of the business that they're working with, and they need to understand in each table, each column, and what they represent, right? This is a really painful process, and it's usually the part which takes most of the time. So we took that as a principle, and we did the same thing for the AI, right? We made sure that all these things, like going through the tables, the namings, the descriptions, everything was there. So the process would be less painful for the AI. And whatever we did in this manner, it actually worked. So under 2 months, actually, from finishing the warehouse, we already had a working solution of AI layer. And it was really magnificent because in the beginning, we could not believe that like the number of tasks that were going to the data team decreased by 70%. It turned out that most of these questions could be answered with the AI. So, you know, we had nothing to do. We were sitting right there and just drinking coffee all the time. So this is, of course, not the real numbers, but this is exactly how our UI looked like. This is the schema management layer that I was talking about. You have your user management here, where you can log in with your account. You have your traditional session management, and you ask the questions here, and what you get as the answer is like the charts, the textual information, and even the suggestions of what you can do in the future. And this totally changed the game, to be honest. What it meant was that our data people could actually get inspiration from this. And for example, one of the use cases that we had with the AI was that the questions that was asked to the AI meant that these are some of the things that we are not covering with our BI dashboards. So it straight away meant for us that we would use this information to improve what we were generating on the report level. And it was kind of like a feedback loop. So managing this was really hard, right? Because there's always these new model updates that screw up your AI layer. And there's so much going on, like you have to validate all these answers that AI generates because especially we are a bank and we cannot just accept bad information. So we knew that we didn't have time to actually continue improving the system ourselves. So, but what we understood was that what good meant in AI world, right? We understood what it would do for us to actually improve our lives and improve the lives of the business managers. So we found this Georgian company actually who was working on data warehousing and BI applications for more than 15 and 20 years. And how they built their AI layer was actually taking into the account all the things that you have ever thought about when you were working with the data, right? Things like you know, how you actually query the data, what kind of results you're expecting, and so on. So this meant that we could actually have a product team who's upgrading this AI product every day without our intervention. So we could focus on things like business value, creating financial impact with this tool, and so on. So with this partnership, we achieved a miracle, truly. What it took data analysts 4-6 hours or even days in some cases to get an answer to a certain question, AI took 30 seconds to do it. And it was like an omnipotent body, and the idea behind it is the most important resource in the world right now is knowledge. And obviously we wanted knowledge to be democratic, meaning that it would be free of the bias to certain groups and teams. It would be free of all those things, and it would be like a friend of everyone's instead of friend of a special team in the bank. And that was the final achievement that we saw from this, that even when we were sleeping, people were asking questions to the AI, and things that kept them up at night were finally put into the bed. So some of the things that we actually learned from this was that we are never going to the vendors anymore, and there are some of the tools that we built in-house. So one of them is a special tool that takes the PDF files and does the automatic Excel report generation. Something that took back office hundreds of hours monthly back then now takes something like 5 minutes per iteration. The point of all of this is that when your team understands the pain of the business, and when you actually trust your team to build these things, they really can change everyday life of your business. They can cut hundreds of thousands of dollars. And basically, what happens after that is that knowledge accumulates, and entire people and employees of the bank start thinking in a way that we can do this and we can automate these things ourselves. And they are coming to us with the ideas in their daily departments of what is manual, and asking us to automate this stuff for them. And I guess this is the most important thing there. The last tool that our brilliant colleague Tornik has actually built is a similar tool to what I mentioned. It's an AI segmentation tool. So basically, it allows a marketing team to cut the middleman, which is a data analyst usually, and directly in a Slack channel ask questions, something like, give me a segment of the depositors under age of 25, etc., etc. And with more than, you can ask a question that has 25 variables in it, doesn't really matter. What this does in the background, it goes to the database, queries the segment, provides it to the marketing, and marketing can directly push a button and send the SMS or push notification. So really the processes that took hours and days before, just over the span of 5 months, are now taking minutes. And basically, if you translate that into the business value and just understand how much money that can cut for your company, it will be in the figures, 5 figures or 6 figures in some cases. So I guess the point of all of this is that you probably in your own businesses are also dealing with the problems of manual pipelines, and especially in the data, you have some bottlenecks. I think the first option and idea in your mind should be to try to automate these things in-house, because probably you already have the teams and people in your company that can do it. So give them trust, give them some free room, and let them build these products, because we know for sure that it works. Yeah, thank you very much, and hope you got something out of it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Shalva. I'm the project manager of Silk Bank, and every project that contains in its name data, AI, everything, there I am. So Aleksi, my colleague and friend, talked about the inner circle, the inner kitchen, about the use of AI in our sector. And what I will do is talk about the avant-garde of communication of Silk with its customers. So let's start. As you know, in the landscape of AI technology, everybody is talking about the answers and possibilities AI provides, but we all know in reality that there is a huge gap between the prototypes you see on Facebook and on the timelines there, that everything is ready and ready to use, between that and the production-ready real problem-solving solutions. So yeah, it needs architecture, it needs planning, coordination, and the nuances of the beautiful language of Georgian. Let me give you some context about Silk Bank. So it's 2022. Silk Road Bank reinvents itself through rebranding, positions itself within a new name, absolute new brand, new visualization and marketing position and strategy. And it decides to reflect its name in its service offering. So Silky service at its finest in banking industry, because As you already probably know, the banking sector of Georgia is a high saturated market with vicious rivals who are ready to eat you up, let's be honest. And therefore, we needed to position ourselves with opportunities and approaches that are basically focused on experience and uniqueness that is not really easy to be repeated, let's say. So, as all growing organizations, we as well, with these huge ambitions, encountered the problem of resource trap, so-called. So you have high standards, your resources cannot follow up, and as a result, you are falling into the following picture. In 2025, we encountered and managed to acquire our 100,000 unique customers, and suddenly 2,000-3,000 chats, which we couldn't effectively solve in the communication in our customer support. We had 10 hours waiting time for each individual chat, 48 hours in the phone backlog. Okay, let me give you a quick example. So you would, if you have a question regarding your, I don't know, card limits, and you would ask in chat, you need the same time as flying from Tbilisi to Munich and back, and still sit through this meetup, and still you wouldn't have the answer to. That was the real picture, let's say. So we knew the problem, but the highest point of the realization was actually a TikTok comment where a customer was saying, I got no answers, and so I decided to leave a comment in TikTok with the hope to receive one. And no, the answer was never found. But yeah, so we decided to solve it. We knew that the answer was AI. We knew that artificial intelligence would solve the problem, but the true beauty of the Georgian language with its specification and uniqueness is on the same time the huge barrier which couldn't quite follow up the development of AI with its first steps. But in 2025, summer, exactly 10 months ago, Gemini's models, I will be frank, was ready to actually handle the Georgian language with its all flaws, with its uniqueness, and we knew that we were ready. So the AI building, our chatbot, contained 4 main pillars, let's say. First was building a RAG pipeline, which I know is already an echo from the past, but still at that time, it was the effective solution to it. So our huge informational library, which we comprehended, we are a bank, we have bureaucratic documentation, but still to give it the form understandable and easy to comprehend for the AI is an absolutely different topic. The second was to train its tone of voice, because as we said, we wanted to give the customers a unique experience not found anywhere else. So we needed to make the AI think like our own, like an employee of us, to represent its marketing flows, which we do, the positioning and everything what we do on daily basis. Third, and the hardest part was as a regulated subject and object, let's say, from the NBG, National Bank of Georgia, we had huge security layers to overcome and secure the system itself, which had 2 main categories. First of all, the data anonymization, according to GDPR laws, as you all know probably. And the second was the guardrails and defensing system against prompt injection, so any penetration from outside to make the system secure. And my favorite one, the cultural understanding, to make the AI think like a Georgian, which is really a hard thing to do. So yeah, after this, we managed to create a chatbot that here is reflected the system, how it works. So you have the main brain here in the center, where the input and the context come from the user on one hand, and the prompt management from the another, to actually tailor the instructions according to user's request. The agentic engine then delegates this task to one of several LLM models based on the request and the type of the request and the efficiency, let's let's say. We have authentication tools, memory tools, knowledge bases already said, and data APIs to actually retrieve customer specified information, and guardrails, of course. Here in between, you have the anonymization tool, so the full package, let's say. And as an output, we have two different outcomes. First is the final response, if it fits into the scope of the AI itself, and if not, then the handoff, which is a very important topic in this all. Because AI, as probably you all had the feeling when actually starting talking with the AI, you always have the feeling that something is missing. Not always the answer is fully understood. The question is not fully understood, and the answer provided is not comprehensive enough to cover it all. So especially in the financial industry, we needed to give the customers the feeling that the AI itself is repeatable, so every question again gives you the same answer over and over again. It's deterministic, which is an oxymoron at the end of the day, because AI itself is not deterministic. So we had to build up this trust. First of all, the human in the loop was one of the main pillars in this case. For pretty much 6 months, all chats were read by our employees. Everything was controlled, every word used, every sentence, everything beyond that. The second was actually to give the customer the feeling that at any stage of the communication, there is always a human at a touch. So in a step to actually grab. So this gave them the ability to feel secure, to feel like secured in the hand of the AI, because there is somebody watching, or not always watching, but somebody to grab directly. And yeah, the escalation logic was based on two. First of all, if the question is outside of the AI scope, and the second, if the user requested it itself. So yeah, we accomplished it, and it was a nice thing to see how it evolves and how it's transformed into a really Georgian-like talking person. And what's the main thing here is we over and over repeat the name of our AI chatbot, actually named by Alex, is Tinatin. As you already know, it's a huge cultural connotation behind this name in our Georgian culture. But besides that, the reason why my colleague and friend named it like that was actually to give it a soul. Okay, I know it's a little bit cringe, let's say, but still to give it a human touch and to take out the physicality of a machine and give it a human touch, let's say. So yeah, in September, we rolled out the version 1, which had information about the general inquiries, service and product offerings. In February 23rd, 2026, we rolled out our version 2, who had already a little touch of personal information, which is a huge thing in the banking sector, because MBG was like showing us with the finger like that the whole period through. And yeah, we have rolled out version 2 and 2, which is already an agent that covers the whole customer product and services in 360 view, which means we have the foundation to understand the customer in its whole capabilities, movements, actions, and understand what kind of personalized offers can be actually tailored for the customer itself, which I will come to that topic a little bit later. So nobody was leaving any comments in TikTok anymore, just got blessings. So the feedback was good. The employees of the customer support had the option to take 1 hour full breaks, at the end of the day. So yeah, everything was going fine. And in our understanding and the vision of Silk is that in the final game, Tinatin version 3 is a full banking agent who knows exactly on a very customer level identification what to offer, how to offer what the customer needs, and how to tailor our services in the most appropriate and accurate way. But yeah, what we covered here is actually the textual part. But as probably all the companies you represent from your side has call centers, the direct and main communication channel between customer and bank or company. And what we saw is, okay, the huge load was taken away with Tinatin, but still there was a goldmine of data, which is the direct telephonic communication between customers and our employees, which cannot be used because the data is huge, 500, 600 calls a day on average, 3 min. And nobody could listen to that amount of calls. And therefore we saw it. We knew that this is actually the main key to understand the customer, its pain points, how to actually know and be in front of the needs of the customer, to be ready and to provide what is necessary. So we knew we are just taking 1 or 2% of this data, and in the background we have more than 98% which we could use but cannot. So the solution was to actually build an audio analyzer who would actually transcribe and analyze all the calls in all the different departments: sales, customer support, market research, customer interviews, etc. So it contains 3 main pillars, let's say. First is the AI studio, which we created, where a normal basic user who has no prior experience in coding could actually tailor an AI for a specific measurements, for specific aim, and for specific departments. And this AI would then do 2 very important jobs. First of all, speech-to-text transcription, one, and the second is then analyze this transcription and take out the most important notes from it, the insights, pain points, and to understand the customer and its relationship with the bank. So we are measuring it in 3 different directions. First of all, the audio itself is analyzed, the pain points, as I already said. On the second hand, the agent and our representative is analyzed. How well is the service provided? How well our offerings are actually brought to the table? And how well is the customer understood actually? How well the job is done in a nutshell. And the third is to have an holistic and overview of the department this AI tool is used to understand actually how and what are we doing right, what can be improved, where do we lack of expertise, and where is a way to improvement. So instead of 1 or 2%, now we are covering 100 of it. We know and we have a hand on the pulse of the customer, and we understand that everything that arises from this view, from this relationship with the customer and bank, we know that we are there, we understand it, we hear it, and we reflect it in our offering. So to wrap it up, as I already said, we envision the final outcome of Tinatin as a full banking agent, actually connected to this voice analyzer. So to give Tinatin a voice, where in our understanding, the future is banking is where you open your phone, go into it, you see an agent, you talk with them, they help you and guide you through the banking bureaucracy, which is not always a pleasure to do. And to change actually the approach of generalization of each segment or group to a more personalized experience where the customer is seen in its, let's say, personalized view. And every offering is tailored according it. Yes, and the main thing that in my belief, is the takeaway from all of it is, I'm probably sure all of you who are attending today here heard once or twice in your lifetime at least the phrase that AI is actually taking our jobs, or is something very much of a problem for some people. But in my belief, this is a very huge philosophical problem and mistake of thinking, because the accuracy and effectivity of the AI depends on the frame you give to the AI, to the trajectory you show it, and tell them what you want. But the main thing is, the more accurate the AI is, the shorter the frame of the movement of the AI. And here comes the human touch, the synergy, this creativity, out-of-the-box thinking, which creates this fusionized product, which in my belief is something we need to all thrive through. And this is what I wish you to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have time for questions. So if you have any questions, it's fine. I will give you another microphone. You can raise your hand and I will give you the magic microphone. No questions?
Thank you for the presentation. My question will be to the Alex. As I understand from the presentation, the layer of transformed data storage is actually on S3 in your architecture. So does it provide enough performance for your queries and everything?
Transformation layer is not on S3, so if I understood your question correctly, so transformation layer is on Glue that we're currently using. The ETL jobs are actually done in Glue. I mean the T part, obviously there. But if you mean by the storage, there are several layers of the S3 you can use. For example, for the data that you don't need very on everyday basis, you can use stuff like the Iceberg and etc. So stuff that you want to actually use every day. I mean, you can use Iceberg. And obviously for the big data, you want to use Iceberg because it provides like AC transactions, which is the most important thing you need in the warehouse. At the moment, we are not dealing with huge data like petabytes, I can tell you directly. So we are dealing with terabytes still. But with the current pipelines that we are building, the most beautiful thing about AWS Glue is that you have Spark, which gives you the distributed compute. So even if the data that you're transforming is too big, still it can handle it because you can assign many workers to it, and you can assign correct proportions. Did I get your question correctly, or was it something else? Okay, thanks.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. My question is about measuring the success or error rates. For instance, you have Slack to SQL. How do you measure? How do you estimate? And also about Tina, about voice assistant. Can you give us more details about the measurement? Yeah, thank you. And refinement, of course.
Refinement?
Refinement.
Yeah,
do you improve?
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to start with validation because I think it's interesting how we do it. Is right now we are using thinking models in the AI layer, right? So when you ask a question about data, what it does, you can actually open this thinking box, and it's like you're looking at how this person, in brackets, is actually thinks. It's the same as if you have a new junior data analyst and you assign a task and you want to understand how this guy thinks, right? You ask him a question, okay, how you're going to approach this problem, and he tells you how he's going to approach it. He's going to use that table, he's going to use this column, he's going to do this calculation. In the very same manner, this is what we see in the thinking process. So that's the first touch of the validation. The second touch in the testing environment, let's say, is we're asking the same question like 10 or 15 times. And if we are not going to get exactly the same answer, because in data you get deterministic answers, then we know that something is wrong. So that's a second layer of validation. And the third layer is obviously like human in the loop kind of process where we ask our team, because we have 50 of them, like business users, to test it. So we did spend something like 1 month on this process, and we got the accuracy rate like 95% and plus. But when we changed our gold layer, so we added more descriptions after the first feedback loop, we actually increased this rate 99% and plus. So the way we actually evaluate right now is we take random 10 to 15 queries a day, and we actually ask the data team to run these queries themselves and to actually compare the answers. And we do the same with the thinking process. We go to the random chats that business has spoken to, and we open up the thinking process, and we see how it thinks, and if it has any kind of, let's say, philosophical problems with finding the right data or finding the right joins. So that's our first touch. Did I answer your question? Of course.
Wait. People online cannot hear us, so just a sec.
Is there any automatizations to read this thinking process, this chain of thoughts and reason?
Thanks for asking that, actually.
Like meta reasoning. Thank you.
We have not launched this yet, but this is the plan, that to have several agents kind of checking this main agent. So, one of our friends actually told the story that he has 20 agents, and out of these 20 agents, he has one judge and judge is Opus 4.7 or something, right? So all these guys talk to each other, they solve some problems, then the judge comes in and tells them that, okay, this is right, this is wrong. We're kind of planning to do the same thing. We're going to have an additional agent layer, which is going to run read all these chats, and it's going to do like the loop where it checks the answers from the database. Of course, this is not like 100% accurate because the judge itself could be wrong, but this is the mix we got plus the human touch so far.
And about the TINA team part. So to be frank, the main KPI for us all was actually how many people in the customer support had time during the day doing not the boring job they do on daily basis, this routine, repeatable stuff, but more comprehensive, insightful, creative work. So this was the main KPI we just gathered ourselves around. But to give you numbers, we had a 10-hour waiting time, as I already said. In the first 24 hours after the initial launch of TINA Team V1, it dropped in the first 24 hours to 20 minutes. And this was our main guide, how many questions could actually not be escalated to a human agent. The more, the better for us. So we just went through a trajectory, how can we cover all the questions relevant to the banking products and services, so no questions are escalated, no questions are transferred to the human agent, and their resources are used in a more comprehensive way. So this and all other timely connected KPIs, which how many questions, in how many answers are the questions resolved of a customer? Is it 8? Is it 5? Is it 3? Now we are approximately between 3 and 5. The ultimate goal is to go to an answer as comprehensive as possible, so no further questions arise. So this is our guide. The questions of the customer are our guide, and we follow that path.
Yeah. One final question in the back, and then let's move on. And if you have any other questions, you will have time after all of the speakers are done, and you can talk to Aleksi and Shalva.
First of all, thank you for brilliant presentation. I'm from TerraBank, and we are experiencing the same process you have told us. And my main question is that what did you do, or how much time it took for you to make AI trust employers? Because as an analyst, I should trust the AI. I should not double check every time the AI should give me a results or scripts. What have you done? Because in TerraBank, we implemented the AI with data mine team also, but in some cases, I still use my MS SQL tables, and I just don't go to AI, Unistream AI that they use. So what have you done to make the trust of the employers into this AI, basically?
Okay, I will start with the TINA team part, and then you can do it with the data. So basically, to be honest, there is no 100% validation of the whole scope, right? Even stuff done by humans need validation for method, let's say, double checking to be sure that we are on the right thing, especially in the most sensitive areas of the banking sector. So double checking is always the key, and I'm not sure that in any short time of period would we go to that point to never validate. But I think that's actually the beauty, because in validation there comes the understanding how the AI thinks and how it can be improved. So I believe that validation is a key for improvement. It takes time, but I think it's a very productive time spent.
So in regards to the data validation with the AI sensor, first validation is the gentleman asked the question. So the answer to that is the first part. And second part, to make the quality better of the answers, is that I scrutinized so much all the gold layer that I actually forgot to say its gold layer is actually not the best thing that AI likes. So what you want in gold layer, what you have is like bunch of codes in the fact tables from the dimensions. But what I want here is actually horizontally huge tables, which have all the information. Like, for example, you have age, you want age groups in the same, like in additional column. And this is the type of tables that AI likes from our understanding. So the first thing is to actually restructure our tables a little bit to make it like AI likes, let's say. And the second thing is to add the training cards. So we have a bunch of training cards, and right now we are working to make it vectorized because they just made this update. So by the training cards, you're kind of giving it a context of how your bank differs from all the other banks in the world, let's say. So it kind of answers the question in your bank's perspective. But you got to be careful there, because if you put your own thoughts in there, AI is going to start like taking it, and it's going to be a little bit biased. So what we are doing mainly is we are stating the facts. For example, right now, there are 5 banks in Georgia, right? The biggest banks are this, and this. Second was trading cards. And third, if there are vague columns, and by looking at the answers, if we see that AI cannot really understand how the certain column actually works and what's in it and how to use it, we are adding descriptions to those specific columns. Of course, we cannot add descriptions to like 10,000 columns and 100,000 columns. So what we are doing is we are looking at the wrong answers that AI generated, and we are trying to understand what went wrong there. And it's usually something like AI doesn't understand what some kind of column name means. So we are putting it out there, and usually that improves the result. So this is how we do it, basically.
Yeah, sorry, I missed one audience member. So one more question and then we're done.
Thank you for allowing me to answer, to ask. Aleksi, you basically answered my first question. That it seemed to me that you said that you have very intuitive naming in your tables and column names, and congratulations on that. But still, it seems like the AI would need a business context. And my question was, how do you deal with that? And you just basically answered that. And the second question was regarding the Tinatin. How do you manage the source data, the texts that you provide to Tinatin? Is it all manual, the human revised, or do you have some kind of automation in place?
So we basically had a great jump in the start because, as you know, the banking sector is a highly bureaucratic sector where everything needs to be documented and sentenced, put in words, etc. So we had already a big library, which need, of course, a restructurization. So to give it a form, to give it a structure, comprehensiveness, a part of it, to be easy to read, to find the context easily, to be easily understandable in the semantic context. So we had a jump, but yeah, still the first 3 months of the working was actually doing the paperwork, sitting in front of documents, writing there word by word, thinking of all the hypothetical situations where a word could be misjudged or misunderstood by the AI. So giving it a huge layers of description was the key to that. So we spent a lot of time with that, but once it's done, then you are free from those chains. But yeah, huge work.
Thank you. So, please. Now I'm going to give a short word to DataFest representative Anna. I will switch the presentation in a second. I cannot multitask, sorry. So here you go, Anna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna, and I will just take 5 or 10 minutes of your time. I know we still have lots of interesting things to talk about. Yeah. So I wanted to give you information about this opportunity, which is a global quantitative finance modeling competition. I know it's a lot. At first, I wanted to ask you if we have anyone in the audience who are interested in trading. We do. I see some hands, and that's great. And I hope that people listening online are also interested. Or maybe if you're not, this could maybe raise a curiosity in you. And so this opportunity, you can discover how the world of quant finance works and learn how you can become part of it. This championship is actually done for last several years very successfully, and people around the world are participating in it. So this year, with partnership of Forset, we will have an opportunity to share this information with you, with our Georgian audience. And the organizer of this this championship is WorldQuant, and here you can see the QR where you can access their website and register. I will talk about that later as well. But what do the participants do in this championship? Actually, as a part of the competition, participants develop financial models, so-called alphas, that predict the price movements using historical market data. Teams with the strongest performance will have lots of opportunities. For one, will be awarded a range of prizes. Currently we are in the first stage of the competition, which will last till May 19. The first stage is very easy. You actually register on the website and create one successful alpha. And then we go to the second stage, which is national and regional round. And the third stage is the global finals, where you can go in Singapore and we compete for the cash prizes from total pool of $100,000. Also, there are lots of benefits why you should be part of this initiative. You can explore career opportunities if you're interested in this topic, and maybe if you're interested in internships or full-time or part-time roles in WorldQuant. And here is a QR where you can access their website. You can register individually, but entering the competition, you can enter individually, but also as a team. There is several criteria. You have to be 18 years old. And also, if you are participating as a team, you have to be related to the same university. You can be an alumni or a student in that university. You can partner up with your lecturer or anyone. It's just you have to be from the same university. And I know that you may have a lot of questions for now, and we will have an info session tomorrow at 3 online in Zoom. And you can register in the info session as well, and listen and hear about more about this opportunity, and also ask questions. And maybe in the audience, if you're still not interested in this opportunity, you can just share this information with the relevant people. Maybe you remembered someone, your colleague, your peer, anyone who could be interested in finance, quant, and this type of themes. So we will be very thankful if you could share this link with them. Thank you so much, and I hope that I will see you tomorrow in online, or maybe I will, I don't know. Yeah, or maybe in Singapore, and I'm going. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, that final part was kind of bragging. Okay, so now the host himself will present to you a very controversial title of the presentation. Natik, please join me here on this imaginary stage. Tell everyone who you are and proceed with your presentation.
This is working, right? Great. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you all here in our lovely office on this lovely evening. So today I wanted to discuss with you some of the recent things that have been happening in the industry, also share some of my ideas, and also maybe discuss about these things a little bit. So first, a little bit about myself. I'm Natik Kurbanov. I'm a lead software engineer at EPAM. I'm also an AI/cloud native engineer. Roughly 2 years ago, I had a very good luck, one in a lifetime, lucky day, when I went from a Gen AI enthusiast to an AI native developer. And my life has been full of AI hallucinations and trying to convince my AI not to be rude to me and trying to convince it to replace me. And I'm also an Georgie and Gen X Georgia community driver, which are powered and financed by EPAM. It's one of the largest EPAM communities in the region, actually. And so yeah, the purpose of this talk is to discuss where agents development is heading, where last year's kind of trends fell short, and why lots of autonomous agents that we've been hearing about in recent years kind of didn't really work out, and which new pattern keeps getting shipped. Basically, that's the whole purpose. But before we start, I would like to also kind of get to know you. If you could maybe raise your hand if you are a data analyst. Okay, great. Can you please raise your hand if you are a machine learning engineer? Okay, machine learning / data scientist, yeah. Okay, what about software engineers, backenders, maybe? Great. Any managers in the house? Product managers? Okay, delivery managers? Awesome. Okay, more or less, I understand who I'm talking to right now. So it's really nice to meet you. So let's first start with the so-called, whoa, why is it going ahead? So let's start with the so-called dream. The dream that we've been sold for the last couple of years. Basically, that we have agents that are fully autonomous. They follow some kind of a trajectory to complete the task that we give it. We just have to wish, and it will get it done. Some kind of like a genie in the bottle, right? You kind of ask it whatever you want. They kind of talk to each other. They get it done. That was kind of the premise in recent years, especially last year, when the industry kind of proclaimed it as a year of the agents. And we were sold so many ideas of these multi-agent systems, so many wrappers, libraries. But what really happened since then is that we kind of saw that these agents got into loops that never ended, or we kind of constrained them by some hard stops, and we never got the result we wanted. Or the quality kind of degraded, and the token costs went through the roof. Because for very simple operations, we kind of saw that you kind of get 20, 30 agents doing a simple task, and the thing that could have been just me doing it in 5 minutes now cost my company $500 in token consumption. And so all these operations became so messy that we kind of ended up creating and coining new terminology. We started with prompt engineering, context engineering. It's always about some text being given to AI at a particular moment that will magically solve all the problems. And in 2026, as the costs are rising, we see that it wasn't really a good idea, because all this token consumption now is hurting us more than ever before. And obviously, it was great marketing. You know, we were all sold on an amazing idea that you have these amazing independent agents. They're like professionals in their job. They know one great thing. They are like domain agents. They're experts. They will do it, right? And then you have a different agent, and it almost feels like in the company you have a designer, business analyst, you have a QA engineer, backend engineer, front engineer, and you kind of go talk to each one of them, and then they kind of do the whole magic, right? But in reality, this is what was built. You kind of had to have some human telling it when it was a good quality or a bad quality, so-called human in the loop. You kind of had to have some budget and stop conditions, because obviously you cannot have it run forever. You need to stop it at some point, and you cannot have unlimited budget. It's not like we are backed by trillion-dollar companies and we have unlimited resources, right? And you also need some guardrails, because your agent may start saying things that you don't want your customer to hear, or you personally don't want it, because the quality of the information isn't just what you give to the agent, it's also what you get back. So all these things pretty much have created a chaos of intermediary wrappers, intermediary logic, workarounds. And we never achieved the situation where just these agents just talk to each other, because there's always something that needs to sit in between multiple LLM calls. You need an LLM for another LLM, an LLM for another LLM. You need to clean the data, you need to filter the data, re-rank the data, basically bazillion tokens. And these caused a non-deterministic chaos, because all of your agents, doesn't matter how amazing your prompts are, how amazing your guardrails are, they are still more or less non-deterministic. And doesn't matter what parameters you set, the so-called temperature, reasoning, and however you play with those parameters, end of the day, you kind of don't really get the non-determinism that you want. That's how in the industry we saw this thing called workflows that kind of have LLM calls bounded and completely routed around through backend logic or regular logic, where you take in information from one, you do some magic on it yourself in your code, and then you pass it to another, and then you kind of create automation in a way where you have the full control. Yet, even with that determinism, your agents are then dumbed down not to be able to answer types of questions that you wanted to answer. And then you need to build another workflow with some condition for it to route on that particular situation to something else. And this basically adds more latency. A question that can be possibly answered within 3 to 5 seconds, you need to have it first check with one guardrail, another guardrail, have another workflow or agent check it. And basically, it just doesn't fix any problem. It's just a very expensive toy in your plethora of toys. And the context grows also horizontally, because for one single request, when you have few hundred tokens, now you have a chain of all these operations, because the agent that you had, it got some input, it gave you an output. And then output is now an input for another agent. And that agent's output is an input for another one. So you pass around information like like a merry-go-round. And you consume more and more and more in tokens. And at the end, what happens is that if you get an answer at any of these steps, your agents treat it as something correct. And then it continues down the chain, and you in the end receive not only the bad answer, but the answer went from some 20,000 tokens to 200,000 tokens. And you basically wasted a lot of money and resources, and your customer is mad because they spent maybe 20 to 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes waiting for an answer, and they didn't get it. And as these extra API calls to your large language models consume a lot of latency, and there are no finish times in the horizon, we see an issue that you basically have a product just for and it's a product with AI in the name, and that's it. You're using AI for the sake of AI. There is no benefit you're getting from it. And the agent architecture, as we know it, has been changing quite fast in recent years. So fast that every 6 to 12 months, you see something new come up, some new patterns. But largely, we've been seeing patterns where you have some kind of a MCP gateway. So you have an orchestrator, a central engine. You can call it agentic engine if you would like. And that orchestrator needs to decide what needs to be done for what user has requested. So through MCP gateway, you kind of have exposed common tools for all of your agents or for different applications. And first thing that you do is that you kind of need to take the list as a JSON form of all of your tools, all of their definitions. They need to be fed into your orchestrator's LLM. That LLM, per every request, needs to understand which tool to call. And then it makes the tool call. Then it goes down the whole chain to make the operations, and what it gets back gets completely fed into your large language model. So your context keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what do you do to fix this? Basically, you need to write some workarounds. You need to create some interceptors so that you intercept particular calls, kind of strip out information, and then pass that information down to that orchestrator that will consume it. So if we talk from some wrappers perspective, you end up having this whole information then being fed to your wrapper, and depending on the style that your wrapper prefers, it will consume different parts of the JSON, or it will consume everything. And then we kind of saw in industry this new thing called agent skills. And these agent skills was kind of supposed to fix the issues with the architecture with MCP, because they saw largely that in industry they were using MCP for everything, and it wasn't really designed for everything. And they saw in industry a particular use case where all you need is to have some dynamic prompts. And these dynamic prompts work almost the same way like your tools. So you fetch description of your prompts. For example, you have a tool called, fetch skills, skill descriptions. That basically fetches all the skill descriptions in like very lenient, small descriptions, not very big. And those descriptions tell it, like, for example, you have a Java reviewer skill, you have a Kotlin reviewer skill, you have mobile developer QA tester. Like, you have particularly designed skills, a set of prompts for a particular type of task. And your agent consumes that description, or orchestrator. It determines which skill it needs, and then in consequent tool call, takes the description and injects it into its prompt, in its system prompt, and then consumes it with the API call together with the user message. And that's kind of how in the Cloud Code and other wrappers, also GitHub Copilot, this has been injected in recent months. And we have seen a situation where all we need is a prompt. We don't need gigantic applications with huge prompts. We just need specializations, and those specialized prompts do one thing and they do it great, and they are dedicated for a particular task. And then in recent month, more recent, we see some patterns largely popularized by Anthropic and also by Cloud Code, which one is a pattern in which you have skills plus sub-agents. And what is this pattern about? Basically, you have an orchestrator that creates, that basically instead of consuming all of the information itself, it designates what tasks need to be done. Then, to complete those tasks, it looks for skills. Those skills those prompts, dynamic prompts, are then injected into fresh context. And then it does one task only as a sub-agent. It does the whole task, returns a summary back to the orchestrator to give it information what it did and was it successful or not. And then the orchestrator decides itself, does it need to do it again with a different skill? Does it need to retry it maybe with a different prompt? And if the quality of the information is good enough. And with this information, with this type of flow, what you get is that you don't consume all of the tokens that your sub-agents generate. And because you get just multiple thousand, like 1,000 to 2,000 tokens for summary, what that sub-agent did and what kind of response it received. That's it. And afterwards, your sub-agent, if the information is enough that it completed the task, it tells then the user, I did it, I'm amazing, right? Or it then rolls another sub-agent. Maybe it needed a different skill. It can call a different skill, and that way it will, but all these operations will be done in separate contexts. So it won't have context bloating, and your orchestrator won't be consuming everything that all the subagents do. And this way, you kind of distribute the responsibility. So orchestrator is now a more of an agentic engine that needs to decide what tasks need to be done and generate subagents or sub-processes to get it done. And this is kind of the industry where I've been observing the industry is going with tools like Grok, with Codex, with GitHub Copilot. And this was largely popularized with Claude Code and their ability to truncate, compact context, and make the operations more useful or productive. And how does this kind of skill injection work in both ways? So you basically have a user query. This user query gets passed to the main agent, your orchestrator, your lead agent. It's the top thing in the hierarchy. That thing then fetches skill descriptions. These skill descriptions have some kind of a context window cap. So it shouldn't be too much or too big in tokens. And then the model issues a tool call to process those skills, as I mentioned before. And these skills MDs, they're just from the class path, or they're from the disk. Or if you want, you can have it in some S3 bucket, and you can pull it from there. It's up to you. That's already your decision. And then there are these two parallel paths, two options. And one of the options, as I mentioned, is that you either generate a new subagent or you inject it into the system prompt yourself. The issues with one approach is that you will consume more tokens. But there are some use cases when one can be more useful than the other, because you kind of sometimes need more context on what the information was, how to process it. Not everything is like searching the web, or maybe you would want to make some so-called deep research in which you need to analyze the information, you need to fetch it from some places, convert it into something. In that way, you probably need more complex system. And in essence, you basically have these two options in the industry right now to work with your skill injection. And end of the day, you either receive a summary only, or you receive an inline result that gets injected into your system prompt, your operations, I mean. And as I mentioned, with this token consumption, you kind of have always the trade-off of how do you improve your system without making it too hard to maintain for your costs or your financial institution, because somebody needs to pay your bills. And if we think about it from very simple perspective, I've included costs in the style how you see in code editors like GitHub Copilot and things. So if you think of like plain chat as one X task, your single agent with tools, because it has to, like, for example, inject all the information of the tools, right? How these tools work, these descriptions, each parameters, then it needs to call them and then digest its results. So that's a lot of tokens that get injected into your agent in the end to make that call. So that's can add up to roughly 4 times the plain text. And with the whole multi-agent setups, where it needs to call this agent, do that with it, and delegate tasks, maybe open a CLI, run some commands, and analyze this information or that, generate a file, export it. Like when there are multiple tasks that you need to do, that can add up to context. And with the context, it will add up to your costs. Because basically, in many cases, for it to understand in follow-ups, you need to pass it the information about the previous chat. What was happening until now? Otherwise, it has no idea. Or you need to truncate it, summarize it, and then pass the summary to it. Either way, you're going to add up in your context. And when we're talking about tools, one of the key strategies here is also to ensure that your tool descriptions are not bloated And understand that sometimes instead of creating a new agent, you can just optimize your existing tools or create more specialized tools. And in many cases, especially published by Anthropic, we see that you can cut your costs by roughly 40%. But in recent months, we've been seeing a tendency in the industry where they are largely complaining about tool calling logic, because you have a tool that opens up a directory, creates a new file, writes something into a file. You have a tool that opens a Word document, adds some files into your repository, etc. And all those operations obviously consume tokens because of descriptions, because of the result. But your agents or your large language models are smart enough to write code and smart enough to interact with CLIs. So what they have seen in the industry is that if you give your agent access to a CLI, what will happen is that it will write basic bash commands, it will write basic GitHub commands, and it will do that whole operation without any need whatsoever to create dedicated tools and inject itself with its own descriptions. Because end of the day, you don't need what are you going to do with these tools, right? You're, for example, going to open a PR. You can do the same with a GH command line interface that GitHub provides. And as long as your agent knows how to use it, it will do it. And that also has shown in the industry that when you have CLIs and interpreters, for example, Python interpreter, you can have your agent basically write code for integration. It can write code to test your applications. And with these dynamically injected prompts into the empty context, you don't have as much of context bloat. And obviously, money is one problem, and another one is safety. And when we talk about safety, I mean guardrails. You need guardrails for your input, so what you give to the agent, so that you don't get it jailbroken. And you also need guardrails for your output, so that your user receives information that is not offensive to them, to their political beliefs, to their religious beliefs, maybe their dietary beliefs, and also is clean data, right? You want not to have garbage in, garbage out. You want it to be all processed and retrieved in the most usable for user possible. They just want the result. Your users don't want to talk to another thing. They have plenty of people in their lives to talk to. They just want to get on the app, do this thing, and turn off the phone and go walk in the park. That's what most people in the world want. And with the production systems, we have concrete, obvious safeguards. We have LO lists, so that the capabilities that it has. We have output validators and input validators for schemas. Just basically, you validate your JSON. It's nothing fancy or extraordinary. It's just basic, good old backend code. And you also have human approval for any write operations to external resources. For example, you want to add things to the cart. Great, agent can do it, but you don't really want it to make purchases for the user didn't approve. Yes, user can say that for routinely basis, I want you to purchase these things, but user should be the one giving it the permission. And while for coding tasks, keeping one shared context is important, because your coding task isn't just about a particular file. It can be about multiple directories. It can be multiple microservices that you need to that talk to each other. So you kind of need more of a shared context. That's why context windows like 1 billion tokens is amazing, right? When you have a capability in your model to inject all of the information and work with it. But for things like parallel searches, like searching for the web, searching for the data, you don't really need a shared context. And you just need to show, as I mentioned, you just need to give some short summary back. And when we talk about these guardrails, obviously you need to inject them into appropriate places. You need to inject them before it reaches the user. obviously, but you also need to inject it before it reaches even the agent. Because once it gets into the loop, it will probably get the agent to waste a lot of tokens. Because maybe your agent is professional car dealer. Why do you want your agent to respond about coding tasks? You don't want it, right? So you need some kind of guardrail to prevent it. Just telling your agent you are a car dealer, don't answer coding tasks, it doesn't work. We've all seen it. We've all seen popular memes on internet, how these companies deploy agents with Claude or with Anthropic or with OpenAI, and then somehow you have a free ChatGPT. And then you, as I mentioned, in these architectural constraints, you need to have the output guardrail. And those output guardrail, I can give you a simple example. If you work in a geography where that country believes that particular ideology, you will lose all of your users in that particular country if your agent says complete opposite of those things. So per geography, per belief systems, you need to have your agent be politically correct, be polite, be ethical, and etc. And in this whole structure, obviously you have, at the last step, you have the human approval. And after human approves it, you have a verified response. So apart from all these technical details and the patterns, we as engineers tend to talk a lot about all this technicality, multi-agent, single agent, MCPs, skills. There's probably something new gonna pop up in a couple of months or tomorrow, but we tend to forget who are we building these applications for. Because I may think that I need a shopping agent that will automate 6 of my tasks, but maybe my customer doesn't really care about it. Because end of the day, we work for our customers and we need to deliver value. And it's important to ask ourselves questions before we start any type of development. Who is this for, obviously, but also, is the work truly parallel? Do you need to do all these things in parallel or sequentially? Can each of these parts fit into a single context window? Maybe it can, maybe it cannot. And does the value in the end justify the costs? Because, for example, things like deep research, when you use ChatGPT's deep research or Anthropic's deep research, in those scenarios, when you have multiple agents doing a lot of complex things, it does make sense because it needs to generate a gigantic file in the end with a lot of thorough analysis and a lot of thorough quality gates, right? Because the user doesn't want just you to Google things, they want you to also give them verified data because there's a lot of information online, there are a lot of blogs, but your user wants clean data, verified data, and by authoritative sources. So for those kind of things, sure, token consumption kind of makes sense. But for other things, it doesn't. So if the answer is yes, it's good to consider hierarchical orchestrators with bounded subagents. Because with this architecture, you have your whole full control. Your lead agent decides what needs to be done and by whom, and it delegates to that particular subagent. And each subagent is a separate process with its own context, so you don't have any context bloat, and you can truncate the token consumption using this pattern. But if you don't really need to parallelize anything, just have a single agent. You will just have one agent, you'll have maybe 6 skills, maybe 4 skills, maybe 20, and that is enough. Like, we don't need to chase some miraculous solutions all the time. We need to start simple and focus on what the value we deliver to our customers. And to recap, these agent apps are kind of now moving, things like Grok, Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT even, and all these things seem to be moving away from these swarms, because they saw that it consumes a lot of tokens, it consumes a lot of costs, and results are not as good. And now we tend to see that when you ask something to these agents, the first thing that it does, it just looks up a skill for it. In some UIs, you can even see actually it going to that directory using CLI. And with this dynamic prompt injection, it can not only give you more accurate response, but it can also manage the context, so it can save up the costs. So as these whole uncontrolled loops caused all this chaos, and now we are seeing that Opus and other models cost more, it's quite important to try something new, something maybe more cost effective. And this is one of the patterns that I've been observing that is now leading the pattern in all these AI labs. And with that, I would like to thank you all. Yep, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to know your opinion about how should looks like ideal skills MD file or cloud MD if we have some restricted by the length and we want to make it as short as we can, and on the other hand we want to make our agent some productive, so get some great results. So do you have some silver bullet to how it looks like?
That's a very nice question. Thank you. Outside this, I would trust more on the providers themselves for things like that. Obviously, you can read as much documentation as you want, but unless you test it thoroughly and often, you will not see how good it is or not good. So things like Cloud Code or even GitHub Copilot, they provide plugins and abilities for it to not only create skills, but also optimize them, create tests for those. So I would personally suggest you to start using those tools, create tests yourself, and gradually see what is the most appropriate pattern for yourself. Because every single task can require a different kind of verbose language in it, or less verbose or more verbose, but it also can require some kind of a, let's say, like operation. Like you may need to open files. You may need to like search things from the web. So every single task does things differently, and I would suggest you just try the vendor skills, creator, or other things, and then play with it, and gradually you will find your sweet spot. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned the 3 phases of agent development.
Yes.
Based on tendency we have seen so far, can you predict what will be the 4th phase?
That's a very interesting question.
Don't disappoint, Natig. Everyone is.
Yeah. If I go back to those phases, I think the best answer to that question is if you look at these phases, the difference between these is not just the words you see here. The difference between these is where you inject the context. End of the day, each API call is just some context that gets passed to your large language model. You have some kind of API contract that this model expects, and it gives you some kind of an answer in the form of JSON back, right? And based on that JSON, you decide what operations you need to do. I think the phase 4 will look almost the same, but we will inject context in some other place or a bit differently. Because in here or in here or in here, you're just doing exact same thing in terms of injecting, forming a context and passing to the model. It's just at what step you do it and how much of it you do it. But I think in the next step, we will see more optimizations, because I think we will see models be able to understand what your intentions are much better, even by a lot less text. And with those pattern recognition, I believe we will achieve a situation where model will be able to do multiple tasks itself by you not having to give it too much context. And that's what I believe we're going to. More optimization and less context being injected so that the cost will gradually go down. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yep.
I just question and I'm space or so, I'm just very process. Human verification is the last stage.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, like, wouldn't it make sense if instead of human verification happening in one central place, for it to be decentralized? For example, if I ask you to tell me about yourself and you start talking about your life story, and it lasts for a very long time. But instead, like the other option would be to counter me with specific questions that say, what specifically do you want me to know about myself? So that my question is, like, instead of that human verification happening in just at the end, where already all the tokens are spent, would it make sense for it to happen in like beginning, middle, like in small amounts?
Yes, of course. In this particular case or any other, it's up to your design. Like, where do you see the benefit of getting a feedback from your user? Because your orchestrator can create some tasks, it can plan it out, but you can also guide it. And if your flow or your user experience requires it, then you can inject it into any layer you want. And you can have your model receive particular context of what user wants. And it will obviously do it much better. It's part of your design, where you want to put it. But the idea here is that with any guardrail, doesn't matter what kind of guardrail you put, doesn't matter what algorithm you use, what large language model, fine-tuned model, ML model, at the end of the day, any serious operations that require write operation, read operation is fine, write operation, purchases, or maybe medical advice, you need a human in the loop. Yep, thank you.
So one more question, and then we have a quiz, and then you can ask questions directly to the speakers, socialize, finish up all the food for people online. So yeah.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. My question is, so especially in the recent times, you've been discussing about the cloud code, let's say. So the cloud code has been experienced a lot of downtimes. So for instance, you want to do something with it and unfortunately it says, oops, I'm out, or there is no enough space for you, so you gotta wait. So I want to know your opinion. Like, for instance, I wanted to have some sort of a backup. So I was considering use of local LLMs. So what's your opinion on this? Like, do you think that local LLMs can be used for this kind of purpose? For instance, to have it as a backup or something, so that you are not like afraid that, for instance, it's out for one day, so you cannot do anything with it. So now maybe your customers are asking what's happening or something, or maybe you cannot do work without it. So what's your opinion? For instance, I've been personally testing Queen 3.6, so it was kind of successful for me, but I'm also trying to see your opinion on this. Thank you.
Yep. I see two questions in this. One is particularly for the situation when there is an outage of sorts or too much load on it. And with any cloud architecture or any landscape, you can have a multi-cloud or multi-deployment, multi-region setting where you can have, when you can divert the calls by simple load balancing. So you don't have to rely only on one provider or only one deployment. You can always just have backups in the cloud landscape. And the second question I understand is having how good the local large language models are. I believe local large language models are pretty impressive, especially the ones that have been released in recent months, because I use it daily basis, especially due to the costs, because I realized that I don't need ChatGPT for everything. Actually, I realized in recent month that I don't need ChatGPT at all. Because from my use cases, local large language models can rewrite things. It can read the file just as well. Why do I have to pay $20 for it? Cloud Code is a different topic, and Codex is different. For coding, yeah, $20 isn't enough. But I would say local models are pretty impressive. Quen is good, Gamma is good, and as we go forward with these cost optimizations, I believe especially on-device mobile models will become very popular. I think in a lot of settings, maybe my colleagues from banking sphere will agree or disagree. I think a lot of the things that you do with these chatbots don't need an API call to some server in Sweden. It can be done on local model because I just want some kind of a title generation. I want something rewritten or something styled in a particular way, or I want to navigate the application. And navigating of the application is just an action within my mobile app. Why do I need to go to a server on Amazon? Large language model on device will understand from my intent that I need to open or navigate to a deep link or something on file, and will just make a tool call and it will take me there. That's it. So I think it's becoming largely prevalent. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Anatik. I think that's it with the official part.
Thank you.
I will quickly say goodbye to people online, and then we can continue offline. So thank you, everyone. Please, and people on the audience as well. So these are the links. Our digital marketing is here. So she will really appreciate if you would give us a follow. You might find yourself published on our page. And also, if you know of someone who wants to kickstart their career in IT, here's the link to EPAM Campus. All of the trainings are free. You can explore, find out more. Well, and everyone online, thank you for joining. Whole 3 people. 2 of them are us. Yeah, sorry. But I'm sure like people after will watch it. Yeah, and thank you very much.